Casser-Jayne, and welcome to the Halli Casser-Jayne Show, a smart, witty, and timely podcast brought to you at a time when Americans are getting fed up with all the shouting and bickering in Washington, D.C. So I, Halli Casser-Jayne, and veteran White House correspondent Matthew Cooper are here to offer you an insightful, engaging journey into the world of politics, always with a smile and dialogue that snap, crackles, and pops, and with our very special guests. We strive to offer a different take on all things politics in our weekly conversations. So pour yourselves a martini, grab a spot on your favorite sofa, and have a listen as we tackle it all and like to stir, and yes, sometimes shake things up. On this episode of the Halli Casser-Jayne Show, we travel from the sublime to the ridiculous, literally. From exploring the answer to the question, does the Democratic Party have an anti-Semitic problem, to an exploration of satire in politics with Sophie McClennan, the author of Is Satire Saving Our Nation? Mockery and American Politics. Yes, from the sublime to the ridiculous on the Halli Casser-Jayne Show. And we're just beginning. Here we go. Matthew Cooper, it's been a week.
Hello there. It's been a week.
You know, we talked more when we weren't doing this. It's like, but this is a good thing, right? It makes us fresh and
absolutely.
You know, and
we're coming in clean.
Clean, absolutely clean. So you had a good week, my friend?
Everything's good.
Well,
you're in Washington.
I'm here. I'm here to tell you. I keep looking to see the snowflakes or the gray sky, or maybe it's rain. At Washington this time of year. All right, let's start because there's so much going on, as there is every week. But this today, talking about, maybe there's a deal on the wall, maybe there's not a deal on the wall. Well, talk about the deal on the wall.
Yeah, well, it looks like the congressional negotiators came up with a deal, little money for a wall, not adding to the detention beds that ICE has, and, kind of a compromise. And then Trump said he wasn't crazy about it, but didn't say if he'd sign it or not. So that's where we are, hanging.
We're always hanging. And, you can't trust a damn thing the guy says because we've been here before. In fact, had he taken the original deal, he'd be a lot better off than he is right now. Stupid Trump, right?
Yeah, that's the thing.
I mean, he didn't get anything. He lost. He took a whooping from the woman. Except he likes that, Mr. Bendover Trump. He does like that.
Hello.
Let's make noise. But I do think it's interesting, the response, from people. I mean, Hannity went absolutely ballistic, right? You'd better not take this garbage compromise on border wall or else. And Ann Coulter, actually, it took her about 24 hours to respond. She said his yellow, she calls it his yellow New Deal. Let me just say one thing about Hannity. I don't know. I haven't seen him in about 3 months. I don't know. I'm not a Fox News watcher. I try and watch some shows. He looks terrible, Matt. He looks like he's either drinking too much or eating too much, or he's drinking and eating too much, or Trump is wearing on him. Honestly, he does not look well. And if you're not somebody who hasn't seen the guy in a while, I just want to say you need to get to the doctor and find out what's going on, Mr. Hannity.
Yeah, it's
he really does. I was shocked. I actually said to my friend, "Oh my God, look at him!" But
look at Sean Hannity. Look what's happened.
Oh my God, yeah. He's gotten all beaten up. But the fact of the matter is, I don't feel that they're as crazed against it as they were initially. So what did you get? You get a sense of that?
Yeah, I mean, look, he's being told no more shutdowns, but you just don't know with Trump. I mean, he might take it, and then, we'll go through this again another time.
I don't think that's what he's going to do. I think what he's going to do is he's going to try and pull a fast one. The Republicans told him, he could do that deal where he declared a national emergency, and he's kind of been told not to do that, although some of them have waffled on that. His new thing is reallocating money. And it does look like that's the road he's going to go down. He's going to accept it even though he doesn't like it, and then he's going to go and he's going to play with money.
Play with money. Well,
except that's illegal.
Yeah, generally. mean, that's why we have a system.
But that's what he plans to do, and he doesn't seem to care, Matt. And I think this is the point: whether if it's on delay, he can tell the base, "Look, I'm doing what I can do." And we got to see what the courts are going to do. So hang in with me. And, then just push the can down the road or kick the can down the road, I think is the statement, right?
I think so. I mean, he could just declare victory and say, look at all this great wall we're going to be building and there's more to come. I mean, there are a lot of ways he could play it.
I don't think he can play that because he doesn't have that. It's 50 feet, 50 miles of wall. And it's only
50 inches. I mean, he could just.
He can say right.
Bullshit. So he could just.
Yeah, he can
why
say
not
what he
just
wants.
declare victory with 50 inches? I mean, men have been arguing size for a long time.
The National Enquirer would go absolutely ape pecker.
Yeah,
I'm in a mood.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think the whole thing is just,
I suspect this is going to change 15 times, but
probably
people are listening to this, so
perhaps. But it's he lost. Now he can do whatever he wants to do and say whatever he wants to say. He is not getting his wall, and Mexico is not building his wall. So there you go. I mean, I don't think Nancy cares either. She's been very coy the last 24 hours. I thought she hasn't said anything really interesting on anything.
Well, she let the parties stick to it,
right?
They had pretty good negotiators on both sides, and
I thought. So I'm going to jump, but before I do, something came. There was that rally last night in El Paso. We'll go into that in a little bit in depth, except to say that something that did come out of there. So maybe I'm jumping the gun. We'll just go ahead, but. He had a new slogan, finish the wall that never was started. And that just goes to show you what a manipulator he is, correct? That was the big slogan did you watch it at all?
Finish the wall.
Finish the wall. And I wonder about those people who buy his stuff, and I'm beginning to think that they're all, having a problem. Because if they buy it, I mean, they were all there, he said, we've built the wall already, but we haven't built the wall already. And they're, yay! And by the way, I heard from a friend of mine down in Texas that the people who were at that rally were not Texans.
Not Texans.
They shipped a lot of people in. That's the word. That the people who, he lost El Paso in the badly, like got hammered.
Oh, yeah.
And that the people who voted against him were all with Beto, and that there was, that's why they had such a small amphitheater. I think it was 6,000 or something like that. And that a lot of the people were bussed in from other states. So there you go. I just thought I'd throw that out there. The other thing he did was take Hillary's slogan, stronger together.
Yes. You liked it so much the first time.
She had some fun. She had some fun with him today about that. So, but we're getting a handle on where he's going for the 2020 to some degree, don't you think?
Sure. I mean, he's going to say, keep the progress going. The economy's great. The wall's got to get finished. Don't go back to the bad old days of whatever. And sure. And, And
assuming
Cory
he
Booker
makes
was
it.
Born in,
Careful.
Sweden. I mean, I don't know. He's going to, some combination of, birtherism and.
Yeah, no, his tune hasn't changed. But I do think he's moving to the center slightly. He's been talking to the center a little bit more, and I wish my brain would come up with what I had a note in my head that I forgot to write down about just that sort of thing. He's been making some push. Oh, I know. Today I think he said something to the tune of, I'm for all of America, which is a brand new thing. So he realizes he's going to have a fight. He's going to have a fight in that center. That's the first time I've heard him do that. So. They're telling him. They're telling him to move to the center. All right, the Senate Intel Committee today. This was a little weird. They came out and said that they found no direct evidence. I want to be clear on that. Direct evidence of collusion, except the person who came out was the Republican who said it. Matt, that was fishy to me. And Warner dissented and said, no, we did not find. We just didn't find.
Right.
Talk to me about your thoughts, and then I'll jump on the back of what you say.
Well, intelligence and the analysis of intelligence is sometimes more art than science. And in general, during this process, Richard Burr, the Republican chairman of the Senate Intelligence Committee, has been pretty straight, especially compared to like Devin Nunes and the nut jobs in the House.
Right.
But I'm not shocked that he came out today and said, look, we didn't find collusion, so he's exonerated. And Warner can look at the same stuff and say, well, yeah, we didn't find it, but that doesn't mean he's exonerated. So I'm not shocked that this is kind of where they seem to be ending up on their end. But, their investigation was pretty wide-ranging, but it was also pretty limited, too. They didn't have nearly the staff or scope of a Mueller-type investigation. So, Trump can try to go to town with this, but it's hardly conclusive, if anything.
Okay, so here's where I am on it. First of all, I think the timing of it is very strange, and they kind of jumped it out rather than, if you're really going to issue your findings with a report to follow, you would have, seems to me, with both of them standing there and do a presser and, take questions and do whatever it was. That didn't happen either. So to me, this was dirty. I thought this was dirty, and I think there's going to be more to this. It may have been that Trump said, can you get the focus off of the the wall? And who knows? You don't know how these guys work. It just didn't sit right with me. And John Brennan, former CIA chief, he went to town on this today too. He said this is a bunch of caca, is basically what he was saying. He said they are not in the business of criminal investigations, and this really isn't anything. And don't pay attention to any of it because it's minimal. Kind of what you said, which is they're not equipped to deal with this. But I do think, Trump with his skill, might turn around and try and make, hay out of it. I'm just saying to you, it just smelled bad to me. And, my instincts are pretty good if we go back and listen to what I've said, right, along the way, and I've been right about it. So mark my words, something's not kosher here. Okay.
Well, as I like to say, could be.
I haven't heard could be in a long time.
Could be. We don't know. Could be.
I miss my could be. Thank you for my could be. I'm so thrilled.
That's okay. That's your weekly could be.
That's my could be. I didn't get it last week. Last week you didn't give me a could be. You were withholding. That's okay.
I like to shake it up.
Yeah. So we get back to the Mueller investigation, I guess, and Trump former lawyer John Dad comes back and slams the probe, of course, today and says, knock it off and get it done, and they're not going to find anything, and this is a lot to do about nothing, and again, the same day. So maybe something's coming that they all know about?
Yeah. I mean, Trump lawyer says there's nothing there. Okay, that's not really.
But he makes a statement at the same day that Burr makes the statement. That's my point. Right.
Yeah. Well, he spoke to them for this podcast, and I don't know. I mean, if I think people might have expected a little more edge from someone who got dumped from the legal team, or quit the legal team.
Who knows?
In any event,
Yeah, there must be
Trump lawyers
do background work
there.
Yeah. Now, it's my understanding he's still consulting with them, so I don't know if he's getting paid to consult, but that's my understanding. I read that
I guess
somewhere.
he still kibitzes.
Yeah.
I don't.
Oh, I love that word, kibitzes. I haven't heard
a
that.
Little kibitzing.
A little kibitzing. I haven't heard
a little kibitzing.
Well, as you brought up kibitzing, can I bring up a little problem in the Democratic Party with anti-Semitism?
Oh, it's a good segue.
Wasn't that good on my? Do you like that?
Yeah,
do you like that? Okay, I thought that was good.
Okay, we talked about this last week, 2 weeks ago.
But
I know
this is not okay.
Yeah, it wasn't good. Not good.
You want to tell the story a little bit real quick, and then I'll go.
Well, sure. The new Congresswoman from Minnesota, Democrat. How do you pronounce her name?
You pronounce it Ilhan Omar.
Ilhan Omar, yeah. From the Minneapolis area, Somali Muslim. She made some lines on some cracks on Twitter about, Israeli influence in Congress, and it was all about the Benjamins, and AIPAC, and she got chided, rightfully so, I think, for using anti-Semitic tropes, and it wasn't her first time. So she got taken to the woodshed. She got disciplined by Nancy Pelosi and Clyburn and the leadership, and then she issued an apology. Other members in her class, including Max Rose, a Democrat from New York who's Jewish, went by her office yesterday. He chewed her out, but then declared the episode over. And, it's kind of where we stand now. I stated my case that I think, look, there's more anti-Semitism kind of on campus and in academia and, kind of in the left. I don't really think there's really a problem in Congress, but this wasn't good. No. So,
and it wasn't a trope; it was an out-and-out anti-Semitic remark. I want to just make that clear. But I also want to say, Trump asked her to resign, so he made hay out of it as well. But I'm going to tell you what happened to me with this. I received almost 67 emails from friends about this. Democrat women freaked out. Enough is enough is enough is enough. The Democratic Party is doing weird stuff, and the old guard is trying to protect, but the young guard is coming in and moving this party so far. The left on Israel and anti-Semitism, it's got to stop. It's, in the world stage, that's not a lot. In my little world, if people would take the time to say, well, you talk about this on the show, and people are angry.
Yeah.
And rightfully so. I do not think the Democratic Party is handling this well. I do not. And you can watch how the Republicans on the other side, the conservatives, play it. This needs to be nipped in a different kind of bud than Nancy Pelosi.
They let Steve King go on for years.
Right.
I'm not sure they're exactly models of that.
No, that's not my point. I don't care about, we both know Steve King should have gone, and there are a lot of other people, by the way, on that side that should have gone. That's not the point. Right. They are better at making hay out of stupid Democratic holes in their armor than we are on their side. So I'm telling you, this is one they can play, and this is not a good thing. And so you watch on this.
No, I'm not denying that.
Not to mention the fact that as a Jew, I don't know where to go in this party if this continues like this. I don't
really. You feel like the party of Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi has no place for you?
I feel like the party of Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi have got to be more cognizant of a very basic issue for a lot of Jews. And that's anti-Semitism. And they're the old guard. They're out. What happens if they don't nip it in the bud now when they're out? It becomes the voice of the Democratic Party. It becomes the what's the word I'm looking for? Their help. It becomes, their way. I mean, that's it. We are anti-Israel and quote unquote, anti-Semitic, anti-Zionism, BDS. It's a dangerous thing. And it shouldn't be on either party, by the way, because it's always been, until Obama, it's always been a nonpartisan issue. And then, there's that. Okay. We can't solve it. So have we said enough, or do you want to come to defend the party of Nancy and Chuck Schumer?
No, I think it's distressing. I think it's not good. I think it's was rightly condemned. I just look at the Democratic conference in the House and the Senate, and I don't see a lot of anti-Semitism. I see some from a couple of members, and it's disturbing, but I don't see a lot of it. So
we'll see.
I guess that's where I'm at.
Yeah. Okay. All right. We'll see. So Amy Klobuchar had a gorgeous Mother Nature moment when she declared that she was running. I thought that was just really incredible what she did there. I mean, it just worked out. It's like, Mother Nature was with her. She makes the big thing in Minnesota in the middle of a huge snowstorm, and no hat, no gloves, and she just went to town. I would have not been able to speak because I know what happens to me when it gets that kind of cold. It was gorgeous. It was really, really terrific. And I think she's going to make a very interesting candidate, and apparently so do the Republicans, because somebody is slipping all sorts of, garbage out about her being a tough broad and, firing people and them walking out on her and this, that, and the other thing. And I thought she even handled that well during her thing. She could have an Iron Lady moment out of all of this, Matt. She could play this just, if she's really good, as people say that she is. Now I understand that she's been summoned to Fox News, which is interesting. And there are a lot of Republicans who are kind of pro her as an alternative. I think that's true too. But I think out of all of them, out of all the women, she may be the most formidable. What do you think?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think she's had a record of putting together big wins in a very competitive state, and I think she's got a demeanor that's going to serve her pretty well, and she's not taken the bait on things like abolishing ICE, or abolishing private health insurance or other things that that seem fashionable in the party, and that I think will stand her well, in the long run in the fight for the nomination, and certainly in the fall if she can become the nominee. And she's funny. She's got good kind of, she's got a good kind of way on the stump and such. So, we'll just see. We'll just see whether, can the activist, it'll be a test of how strong the kind of, activist left in the party is. If they dominate the party, she's not going to be the nominee.
Right. I think
if they don't.
Yeah. Then she has a chance. But I think what she can do differently, let's say, than Elizabeth Warren or even Kamala Harris, is she can tack somewhat left and immediately get back to the center. I think the other two are stuck on the left. So I think that would be interesting.
No, I think that's right.
Yeah.
I think she's I think she's a very strong candidate. I think the expectations are going to be very high for her to win Iowa, or, so she's just going to have to, make Iowa her backyard for the next year, and we'll see what happens.
Right. So last night Beto made an appearance, and it did quite well. He got a lot of people there, more apparently than Trump got it, even though he bussed people into his rally. But, I was watching him, Matt, and he's very overamped, and it seemed out of sync with where we are at this moment. He made me almost nervous, like I wanted to say, "Here, buddy, take a Valium, calm it down."
Yeah, that's his
shtick.
His MO.
Yeah, it's his shtick.
Right. Very, very staccato.
Yeah, I just don't know
walls are bad.
More.
Doors are good. Doors are walls, but with hinges and knobs.
Oh God, he worries me a little. I think he's a little over.
Well, he's
it's his shtick. It's his shtick. That's his thing. But but in the field that we have thus far, it's like, whoa, baby. Whatever. I real quick, because we only have a few minutes left, and I just wanted to get a couple of things in. The Executive Time, somebody leaked what Trump is up to on his daily basis, and apparently his stamina is so good because he doesn't do anything all day but watch TV. That was great. Don't you love that somebody leaked his schedule? And did it twice.
Yeah, generally that's not considered a destructive act. Like if I really want to get at Obama, I'll leak that he's been in meetings. It's not really.
I think it's my same friend who did it, by the way.
Yeah, well, could be.
I
look,
think so. Go ahead.
Yeah, it's like, do we want the alternative? Do we want him working all the time? I think this should be something of a relief.
Yeah, no, it was pretty funny. I found the whole thing amusing. Equally, I found the amusing that Michael Cohen once again has just said that he is not going to testify. And as you know, because I saw that you retweeted it, I said, you think that Michael Cohen doesn't want to testify?
Yeah, he's doing a lot. He doesn't want that public moment,
God. I mean, really. And they keep saying, yes, 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 he does. And no, he does not. So it's kind of a weird story. I wonder what this is all about, because I guess we'll find out one day.
I don't know. Maybe Mueller doesn't really want him to testify that much,
until he's, yeah. We both don't know, but it sure is fascinating that he doesn't say I won't testify, but just keeps, pushing back the day.
Whatever day it happens, it's going to be
a hell of a day.
It's going to be a long and interesting day.
A friend told me that he may want to wait till he's in the pokey, because if they call you to testify, you can actually get out of the pokey for a week or so to testify.
Oh, that's good. Oh, yeah, that's good. That's where you get a break.
Yeah, so maybe he wants to wait.
When does he have to start the pokey?
I think it's like 2 weeks. Yeah. So maybe that's what this is all about. I just... I'm getting myself some comp time just before I get in there.
Yeah.
And that's it. Okay, really wonderful news today. News that made my heart kind of leap and smile. And Mark Kelly, the former astronaut and husband of Gabby Gifford, announced that he's running for Senate in Arizona against Martha McSally. And I think he's got a damn good chance of getting that seat. What do you think?
Well, I got to say, it does seem like a kind of a brilliant candidate, with formerly married to the congressman. I mean, still married to the congresswoman.
Right, still,
excuse me. Still married. McSally was Air Force. He was an astronaut. He's well known on his own. I mean, he's been in space. We've had a lot of astronauts in the Senate.
He's just got a way. Yeah, he has a way
he's
about him.
He's kind of charming.
Yeah, he's got a way about him that's just charming.
He knows how to fire a gun. He's not going to take a lot of crap from the gun people. And I don't know. It's going to be interesting. I think he's a strong candidate. I think in a presidential year, bigger turnout could really get there.
And McSally didn't win. She was appointed. Hello. She lost.
Yeah, McSally was appointed. And, it helps to be in already, but, she's not tearing up the field yet. So
so we'll see what happens.
I think he's got a good chance at knocking her out.
I can't wait to see. El Chapo found guilty on all 10 counts. He's going to the pokey for life. That's all we have to say on that story, except it's funny that it came at the time of the...
Was Noriega dead? Is Noriega still in jail?
No, I think he's dead.
He died, right?
I think he died. But El Chapo, that Great Wall, he found a way under it. So how ironic. Not once, but twice, by the way. I want to bring up, another quickie. Trump plots an Independence Day parade, and all I have to say is Achtung. Okay.
It's Achtung, baby. Yes.
I can see everybody goose-stepping down Pennsylvania Avenue on Independence Day.
You seemed unaware that we already have a rather large celebration.
I would say, and maybe the best one ever, right? I mean, I love that thing. I go to that one every month.
Yeah, because nothing people like more during the day when it's really hot out in July in Washington is, sitting for a long display of
he's the guy. Oh, now I do want to bring this up, and that's Trump tax joke. Apparently built into his great tax relief that he said was going to be gave, I think, less than $8 to every person who makes under a certain amount of dollars. That was what it really amounted to per week. Now they are going to do their taxes and they are finding out, oh my God, we have no deductions. I told you, I think off air, didn't I, that my friend had one for $3,000 and that she used to get $3,400 back, I think was the exact amount. And now she's getting back $7. And she is.
Yeah, if you're paying a lot of state income tax, this could be a big surprise.
I mean, this is like, uh-oh. And I think this is going to be a big issue. And I want to see how he plays with this one, because I really do. The other thing I want to bring up with Susan Collins very quickly, because Kavanaugh did his first abortion vote. And it wasn't pretty for Louisiana. Let's shut them all down. Susan Collins, is she kidding? She took it on the chin. Oh, my God, before. And now she's getting beat to a pulp. What are your thoughts? I think she's out.
Yeah, she could be out. I mean, I don't think there's a lot of shock that Kavanaugh's would probably vote to overturn Roe. This seems like an indication of that. And, I can't believe anyone fathomed that her argument that he was going to uphold Roe if he was on the Supreme Court.
And today she was out defending it again. and said, he won't overturn Roe. And it's like, okay, either she is in the ozone, backed herself into a corner, can't say anything else, or she's just, she's not a nice girl.
I mean, it's possible, but I don't see it. I mean, I don't think they will overturn it in one fell swoop anytime soon, but they're certainly going to keep chipping.
It's the same thing as Louisiana already only has 2 clinics in the entire state.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, 4 practitioners in the state.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, that's pretty darn stupid. I mean, so it's going to be interesting to see what exactly happens to Susan Collins, because I think she's kind of isn't going to survive this. And I'll close on this, unless there's something else that we didn't talk about the Green New Deal, but and McConnell says there will be a vote, but I think the story is kind of wacky. Yet it's not fleshed out, so let's wait to talk about that in detail. But it's on our radar.
Absolutely.
Is there anything else that I missed?
Finish the wall.
The wall. Well, on that wall, as we were going to air, national debt topped $22 trillion. Oh my God, dollars. So yeah, let's build that. Let's build that wall.
Absolutely. We'll keep borrowing from the Chinese to build the wall we don't need.
Oh my God. And let them build it,
Exactly.
They know how to do it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They're good at it.
Yeah.
All right.
Is that it?
Okay.
We're done?
I think that's it. I think we're done.
Matt, till next week.
Till next week, dear. Bye.
Bye-bye. You are listening to the Halli Casser-Jayne Show. The Halli Casser-Jayne Show posts new podcasts Wednesdays, 3 p.m. Eastern at hallicasserjayne.com and is available wherever you listen to your podcasts. Be sure to find us on Google Podcasts, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, TuneIn, on all your favorite apps. And you can find the Halli Casser-Jayne Show on your Alexa device, too. Just say the Halli Casser-Jayne Show. Oh, and come play with me on Twitter at the Halli CJ Show. Satire, according to the dictionary, is the use of humor, irony, exaggeration, or ridicule to expose and criticize people's stupidity or vices, particularly in the context of contemporary politics and other topical issues. Synonyms: mockery, derision, scorn, caricature, irony, sarcasm. Examples: Saturday Night Live, The Daily Show, The Colbert Report, some of the great political satirists, Lenny Bruce, Dick Gregory, the Smothers Brothers, Jon Stewart, and his replacement, Trevor Noah, and of course, Bill Maher. In a time when good old-fashioned humor seems to have fallen by the wayside, satire has become the de rigueur of the day. We thought we'd take a look at satire, and that's why we've invited Penn State University professor Sophie McClennan, the author of Is Satire Saving Our Nation? Mockery and American Politics, to the Halli Casser-Jayne Show. McClennan works on the intersections between culture, politics, and society, her books focusing on cultural responses to complex social change, such as the connections between the satire of Stephen Colbert and Donald J. Trump. Let's talk. So hi, so nice to have you here and to finally get to talk to you. I've been trying to get to you for a while. You have a lot of good things to say. We're talking about...
Thanks for having me.
Oh, my pleasure. We're talking about satire, and I think it's we need to talk about this. We need to talk a little bit about comedy. We need to talk about a little bit about maybe changing the point of view of how we look at our political world in these times of Trump. You and I were talking off air, and I said you and I are both rolling our eyes as Angela Merkel. We are in roll your eyes times, I think. So let's get going on this. Satire, I talk about it in the opening, but I'm curious how you define it. And does it actually fit under the header of humor? Is that a bad way to characterize satire? Talk to me.
Well, not all satire is the kind of humor that will make you roll around on the floor and get a tummy ache from laughing so hard. And sometimes because it's a different form of humor, that can lead to some confusion. But the good news is that if it were easy to explain it, then I wouldn't have this awesome research field. So I'm happy that it's a little tricky. So one of the things that we like to look at is the distinction between satire and mockery, because sometimes those two things seem to go awfully close. I like to describe it as an impersonation of the president that has an orange face and a big belly and a blustering form of speech is more mockery than satire. The satire kicks in when the impersonation starts to go after faulty logic, abuses of power, making fun of the farce of the, policy and the person. So there's an element to satire which is really about speaking truth to power in an ironic way.
I have to say that satire, and don't shoot me, irony, if you will, isn't something that I think comes naturally to Americans. I've always thought Europeans and certainly the Brits have a better handle on satire, and it's important in culture, although it seems to be changing. Your thoughts?
Well, you're right and you're wrong. So the one thing we know about satire, and again, what makes it a lot of fun for me to study, is the fact that every human culture has it. It is a natural human response to abuses of power. As my son likes to say it, satire is the body's natural response to stupid. So we see it cross-culturally. And we see it emerge in particular force in moments of crisis, in moments of repression, in moments when people's forms of expression are being limited in one way or another. And so if you look at U.S. history, we have a great satirical tradition, and you might go back and it's easy. We could debate where you really want to start this. But Ben Franklin is probably one of our first perfect examples of a satirist who also was a politician, right? We have Samuel Clemens writing as Mark Twain. There's a long U.S. tradition of satirical mockery and comedy, and particularly at the level of trying to get the U.S. public to think critically about important issues. You're also right, though, when you note that in the U.S. it's not as common, for instance, as we might see in the U.K. The U.K. is a highly satirical society, right? They consume it and produce it at a very high level. France, of course, has a very strong satirical tradition, one that for many people in the U.S. feels a little grotesque and obscene. Their comedy is culturally specific. So you see it, again, everywhere, and you see it in different forms, and they come in part based on the kind of culture you're in. Your listeners might like to know that the Chinese government not too long ago decided to ban puns from print. If you put a pun into print, you'll come under some sort of pressure, maybe even eventually prison, because according to the Chinese, puns could sort of damage the use of Mandarin. But the interesting thing of this is that the reason why they're trying to ban puns is because that's one of the ways that the Chinese people, make fun of power by using that kind of sort of simple version of satire.
And that's a point. It's almost as if with satire, what you can't say verbally, straightforwardly, you can. And that's what makes it so interesting. But it's very sophisticated and not to disparage aspects of American culture. I just think it's a question of whether people are educated to understand some of its subtleties, kind of weaves its way through some of our society. But no, let's talk Jon Stewart in a way. Because it is mainstreaming. I did say that, and I think you agree with me that it's starting to become mainstream. Was he responsible? Because there were people before that, which we'll talk about, who were great satirists, other than the ones you've already named. Is that when it started to go mainstream? And
so what Jon Stewart did was he really perfected satire news. So, of course, satire itself, again, it's an incredibly nimble comedic form. One of the most common forms is the cartoon, right? So if you think that you can have satire across a range of genres, doing a range of things, there's one thing that we would give Jon Stewart credit for, and that is taking the genre of satire news to an entirely new level. Bear in mind, we had The Onion. There've been, historically plenty of print versions making fun of headlines, but when you have, say, The Onion or Andy Borowitz, the type of satire fake news they do is really a headline that's not real. One of the ones I like from Andy Borowitz is Midwest sees increase in ER visits among climate change deniers who've been punched in the face. This, of course, is not, yes, but funny, but not true. It's not true. but you read it, you get the joke, it's funny, and often it's completely headline driven. So that's one type of sort of satire news. But what Jon Stewart did on his show was he didn't bend the facts. He gave you the facts, sometimes at a level we weren't getting in the mainstream news media, and he gave it to you with irony, sass, snark, sarcasm, and a WTF look on his face half the time. And that became iconic. We really hadn't had that sort of thing. Let's just say there was a history of it. There had been obviously precursors, but Jon Stewart got the platform at a particular time in U.S. history and really launched it and was able to have such significant impact that I think we can expect that type of satire news to be a common feature in the U.S. landscape.
You know, great satirists like Lenny Bruce and Dick Gregory, they appeal to a very specific audience, and they were only able to reach that specific audience to some degree because it was pre-cable. Oh, God. Yeah. And they were left coast, right coast, I think, phenomenon with a couple of places in between. Our political culture it's off the wall right now. I'm sure you won't disagree with me.
No, it's not boring. Though.
It's not boring. Thank God for not boring, but it's keeping you and I alive, that's for sure. But I'm wondering, does satire as a form of comedic release, if you will, go hand in hand with the demise of political civility or sensibility?
That's an excellent question. And in fact, it's part of the research I'm doing in the book that I'm writing now, because it seems to be possibly true, right? That satire has some role to play, let's say, in increasing political polarization, again, right, in reducing civility because it's sort of fundamentally snarky, right? But so far, I think there's pretty conclusive research that correlation isn't true. In fact, it's the satire comes out of the existing political polarization. And what it does, that's really important in a moment like what we're experiencing, is that if you tune in and you watch Trevor Noah, or you watch Stephen Colbert today in his new show, in his recently relatively new show, what you get is a moment of not feeling alone. So folks will talk a lot about the negative side, the fact that, okay, this is pointing out differences and disagreements across the U.S. public. But what it also does is it draws people together in a moment when they're feeling besieged, frustrated, exhausted, overwhelmed. And there's some excellent research on the side of neuroscience on what happens to the brain as it consumes satire. And I can simply tell you that all of that research is positive, right? It's not just that you don't feel alone. It does some incredibly good sort of cognitive release and keeping your brain nimble at a time when it's getting tired and exhausted.
You're reading my mind. I swear to God, you're reading my mind. Every time I have a thought, you answer it before I get it out. And that's a good thing. Because I was going to say that to you. I was going to say, and let me put it a different way. What does it demand of its audience? Because I think that's important.
Yeah. So the research on this is really, really interesting. And to be honest, to share with your listeners, I began studying satire because I was interested in the relationship it had with democracy and civic participation. And that research was very positive. But now one of the things that I'm adding to this that was a new piece was literally looking at the way that satire affects the brain. And this came in part from the reports that we were getting about what happens to the brain when the brain has to consistently process lies. And that research was all extraordinarily depressing, that you get cognitively exhausted, that you turn off, and that even worse, you may start to believe the lies if they're repeated to you enough times. The research on the other side, though, regarding satire shows that a number of amazing things happen. First of all, it's a high cognitive function to process it. As you put it, not everyone gets it, right?
Right.
Not everyone gets sarcasm. You can even have like people on their dating profiles will say, I'm sarcastic. So like you either will date me or not because it's that much of sometimes of a dividing line, right? But basically think about it this way. Last week it was freezing out. Let's say you and I walk in, we're passing each other in the hallway and you say, hey, Sophia, how are you? And I say, oh, I'm great. I love this weather. You immediately know when I say I love this weather that I don't. Your brain doesn't even skip a beat. It hears the word love and interprets it as hate or dislike or something like that. So that little ability to hear a word and then process it for what I really meant is a kind of not antidote, right? But it's a counterpart to lying, because when I lie, I'm also using words in ways that they're not, right? I say, oh, the economy is the best it's ever been. And you're like, wait a minute. No, it's not. Do you see what I'm saying? So when I'm lying, there's no irony. It's not fun. But when I'm being ironic and satirical, your brain processes that difference, feels clever, right? And even more interestingly, gets pleasure. And the pleasure part of that process, because you enjoy consuming and producing sarcasm and irony, is one of the best ways to prevent that cognitive exhaustion that happens when you're dealing with a culture of bullying and lies.
Wow. Can I go in 4 directions at once?
Yes.
let me.
That's what we're supposed to do.
That's what we're supposed to
keep
do.
Ourselves clever.
So that's it. And that the first thing that I want to say besides Donald Trump, lie. Okay, we'll get there in a minute, folks. Hang in there. Believe you me, he's part of this conversation. But I want to say to you, basically, I think what you can take from that is that satire is important and necessary for a healthy democracy. We need it.
Yes, absolutely. So one of the things that I originally looked at was the way that satire works to mobilize the electorate. And there was some pretty good research on that. And that was the moment when I was really looking at the synergy between Jon Stewart and Stephen Colbert on Comedy Central and the role that they played really in energizing young voters. We have really good data on this that showed that they had some significant impact. But this piece of it, right, the neuroscience, the cognitive science, this is the new facet, right, the part I'm adding in that is especially exciting and it seems especially important in this particular historical moment.
Fascinating. I want to talk about Barack Obama just in this sense, because I want to ask you how the political comedians and satirists handled him. And then we'll get into Donald Trump, because there's an issue going on that about the media and satire and people and these politicians. Was there something specific to Barack Obama? Because I see a change in how the satirists portrayed him versus Trump. Talk to me.
Oh, well, there's no question that there were some significant differences, due to a huge range of reasons, not the least of which was the fact that Barack Obama could speak English relatively well. That makes it a lot harder to make fun of him, right? So every time Trump tweets and says something incomprehensible, that just creates easy material. Right. Barack Obama wasn't doing that. He didn't have that kind of public persona, but he also wasn't consistently fumbling in the public sphere and giving people easy shots. The interesting thing that a lot of folks overlook is the fact that both Jon Stewart and Stephen Colbert, again, going back to the fact that they were relatively iconic in their moment, they both went after Obama, but they went after him on policy. Colbert had a very sharp takedown of Obama's drone program, for instance. It wasn't the case that they ignored and gave him a pass. That's the public, sort of the common narrative that Obama got a pass and everyone's going after Trump. It's not that simple. They definitely went after Obama, but they didn't really go after what he looked like for many reasons. They went after his policy when they thought that they had a good reason to do it. And so the fact that the policy maybe didn't yield as many opportunities, again, for comedy is something we could discuss. But in general, when there were times that they could call him on the carpet, they did. And so, but the issue is that they went after the ideas and not the person. And that was a really big difference.
Well, you have to have the ideas, or otherwise you have to go after the person.
Well, right.
Right. So I bring up Alec Baldwin and I say this to you. Comedy as truth-telling has certainly been taken to a whole new height right now. Consider SNL. Consider Alec Baldwin, who does a better Trump than Trump. But do you understand what I'm saying? My point, my point is that satire has become a political weapon, certainly for the opposition or the resistance. And I think that's something we need to discuss too. I'm not sure it works when you're on the other side. Do you know what I'm saying? They're a Republican, if you will, or conservative satirist. I just don't think they do it well in this time. And so an Alec Baldwin who, goes after him on the physicality of it. It's almost like burlesque was in a way. It's a whole different story. Does that make sense what I'm trying to say? I don't know if I was clear.
Yeah. No, you're absolutely on it. In fact, in the book I'm working on now, which is called Trump is a Joke, Why Satire Makes Sense When Politics Doesn't, I have an entire chapter on the impersonations and the history of them. Remember that SNL's had already had about 5 comedians impersonate Trump. So there was a long story there. One of the critical things that Baldwin brought to the impersonation was the sense that he was impersonating an impersonation. So that idea itself added a lot to the way in which he embodied Trump. There's other things that he does that are very unique, not the least of which I think is the sense that we get this inner Trump, the inside Trump, the Trump that nobody gets to see in public. There's no question that Baldwin's impersonation of Trump has had massive public resonance and may well be shaping how people think of him. We have long history with SNL doing exactly that. The first being Chevy Chase impersonating Gerald Ford as spastic and clumsy when Gerald Ford wasn't. And a lot of people took that impersonation, got confused, and just think Gerald Ford was clumsy now. The other one that's a great example is Tina Fey impersonating Sarah Palin and saying she could see Russia from her house, which is why she could understand, which Sarah Palin actually didn't say. But many people will remember that line and not be clear on whether it was Palin who said it. Tina Fey's impersonation of Sarah Palin, we were able to document with pretty significant detail that Tina Fey was able to change public view on Sarah Palin in ways that likely affected that campaign. So there's no question that these impersonations matter, and you're absolutely right that they matter now more than we've ever seen, and that SNL, and again, with SNL, it's not just Baldwin, right? Don't forget all of the characters Kate McKinnon has played, or Melissa McCarthy as Sean Spicer, arguably leading to Spicer getting fired, right? So the show has become really politically significant.
The power of satire. I want to say this a slightly different direction. I mean, who hasn't questioned the media's role in the rise of Donald Trump? Journalist that I am, I will tell you, But how is it that satire seems to be doing a better job of covering the news? And it is, in my opinion, than the journalists. They get it.
We've had, to my knowledge, there's no study that's looked at this in the Trump era, but prior to that, we had this studies in 2007 and then again in 2012 that showed that consumers of satire scored higher in their aptitude of current events than consumers of most traditional television news outlets. So you can control for this relatively easily. Ask people what do they watch, and then ask them what they know, and there you go. You get your data. The truth is that, like I said, when Jon Stewart was giving you the news, the facts were straight, but he was giving it to you with irony and snark and sarcasm. 2 things happen. 1, you're getting information that you sometimes don't get in the mainstream news. But 2, because it's coming to you through irony and it requires that higher cognitive functioning, you're more likely to remember it. That's the other piece that we sometimes overlook. Whereas if I watch something on CNN, it's packaged in a doomsday, what's the sort of sense of an emotional, everything's, in crisis framework. Well, when the brain is processing information in that kind of context, it shuts down its ability to remember facts, and it just becomes much more connected with negative emotions. And so that's one reason why you can say today with a pretty clear certainty that getting your news from John Oliver, Trevor Noah, Samantha Bee, Stephen Colbert, Seth Meyers, these shows, right, the little 15 minutes you might get of news-related items will give you more facts that your brain will remember in a better way than if you're watching cable news.
So here's another question, which is everybody you've named is from the left. And so my question becomes, it's no joke. I mean, I think there's something here. I don't know. And my question is, have studies been done as to whether people who have a left point of view, who are, progressive kind of people have a better cognitive ability to understand and figure out satire than, let's say, conservative types and Republicans? Or if the study hasn't been done, I think it should be, but maybe you know something
Well, it
differently.
has been done.
Yeah.
Yes. And you're on to something. And I'm not the one who's doing that research, but I have a colleague at the University of Delaware, Dana Young, and she's doing that research. And it is, in fact, proving what you're saying, which is that it does seem that we have a fairly significant partisan breakdown, not in the production of satire, but also in the ability to understand and process it. The important thing for your listeners to remember is that there's a long history of conservative satire. It's a mistake to forget it, right? There has historically been, and it can be very easy to make fun of some of the outrageousness of the left. Maybe some of your listeners saw Portlandia, which is a pretty good example of that. That entire show is making fun of sort of an extreme version of, West Coast leftism. But what we're seeing today is an increased political polarization, and part of that is the shift in the cultures of the left and the right. I don't think the left has changed as much as the right has. And part of that is because that party's politics has been a party politics that's mostly about fear and about imagining, again, a crisis all the time. And that's not compatible with irony. Irony, those two things don't go well together. And it doesn't mean that the left doesn't have plenty of its own fear, et cetera, et cetera. But if someone is, not familiar with this, the simple way to do it is go ahead and listen to 10 minutes of Alex Jones or Rush Limbaugh or some of these major figures that are, have, tremendous followings among the right. The way in which they speak to their audiences tends to get everyone pretty upset. And that just that's not compatible with satire. So it may be the case that what we're seeing is that the culture of the right is increasingly moving away from that sort of way of thinking. But it's been, historically, there were plenty of times, and there was lots of right-wing satirical mockery, for instance, of Vietnam protesters, things like that. It's just that we're not seeing it today at the same level.
My answer to that is, and I'm on Twitter 24/7, and engaging with everybody because I think that's important. And I can only tell you that it seems that the right seems to have lost its sense of humor. And when
which is ironic, right? Because it's supposed to be the left that can't take it. We're all snowflakes,
right?
Perfect,
right?
And, yeah.
But it isn't so, and you can't even in jest get them to engage in a humor-filled way. So they're under siege. I think that's what it is. But I also think that, we could go on for hours, but maybe that has also something to do with the evangelicals and the Christian right having, taken over so much of the party. I
think you're right.
There is just no sense of humor there whatsoever. And that's a very, very sad thing, to say the least. So, two things before
go ahead. That
Sure.
kind of goes back to where we started, though, which is types of comedy. It's important to remember that among that segment of the right, they really enjoy making fun of people, right? So you can make fun of people. That's not satire, right? You can mock people. You can put them down and laugh, right? So that was we saw that with the Covington Catholic, right? That sort of smug laughing. I think you're funny to me. That's not gone away on the right. It's just not satirical comedy. It's insulting comedy.
Right. Okay. That's fair. I get that too. Yeah. That's not fun.
No, but that's, and again, there's an interesting confusion about that, because often when people do that and they get called out on the carpet for it, they say, oh, no, that was satire. It's like, no, that's not satire. That's just, that's just putting someone down and laughing. That's not the same thing at all. Satire punches up, right? That's one way to think of it.
I think that's true. And the other part that I want to say is, when I was doing all my background on you, feeling the news at you, the Stephen Colbert quote, dumbing down of America or part of America, is that responsible for some of this? The inability to comprehend some of the irony, because that's what we're talking about. And ones have to do with possibly, I know you talk about CNN having started a lot of this dumbing down. So I throw a lot out at you there. Real quick answer for that. And then I have one other thing before we have to say bye-bye.
I think you're absolutely right. There, in fact, are some current studies that are just checking, cognitive aptitude overall among developed nations, not just the United States. And the results aren't good. They're not promising. There are lots of factors. To remember that in the United States today, I believe it's 14 different states that teach creationism in science class. I don't know how we imagine that we're going to advance a nation of bright, talented, young people when we're confusing them like that in school. So there's lots of things that have been going on for a very long time that are playing a role in, as you put it, the dumbing down of the U.S. public.
It's really rather sad, and we could go on. I'll have to have you back just to do a show on just that, because I think that's critical here. You know, at the end of the day, this is what I wonder. If satire is not just a barometer of our political divisions, Sophia, is it also a barometer of how well or how sick our society is?
Well, it used to be the case, like I said, that you would imagine satire comes out of crisis. But now I think that satire has become, in fact, just a political idiom among a substantial portion of the population, many of whom are young. In other pieces I've said, look, the basic division that we need to worry about in the United States isn't red versus blue. It's smart versus stupid. And that's said tongue in cheek, you know, with all due respect. But the reality is that there are people out there that are using social media, right, to be clever, to become more educated, to learn more about what's happening in the world. And there's other people doing something completely different. And we're noticing that division between being critical thinkers, being savvy, paying attention to the facts on the ground, drawing intelligent conclusions, and folks that are having sort of knee-jerk reactions and hysteria. And satire, we're seeing, is associated with the former group of people. And I don't see that going away at all. I think it's only going to get bigger. We're seeing it, in fact, on the rise globally. So this is no longer just sort of a momentary part of satire in the history of U.S. politics. I think it is now become a major staple.
Sophia, wonderful subjects, wonderful book. Can't wait to see this new one coming out. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
All right. I've been speaking with Sophie McClennan. Her book is Satire Saving Our Nation? Mockery and American Politics. Find her work on Salon.com, where she publishes regularly, and on Twitter at McClennan65. And visit Amazon.com to purchase her books. Thank you so much for tuning in to the Halli Casser-Jayne Show. The Halli Casser-Jayne Show is a production of Resec, LLC. Be sure to tune in to the Halli Casser-Jayne Show at HalliCasserJayne.com or listen on your favorite app. New podcasts are posted Wednesdays, 3 p.m. Eastern.